Hello, everyone. Welcome to Boom. I'm Lucho, and we're here with Dame Prue Leith in our Business Owners Ownership Mindset podcast. Now, Prue, I am so thrilled to have you here. It's been such a pleasure to meet you. And well, one of the things that I love about you is how you have such an, outspoken, like you say what's on your mind. And we were just talking about this yesterday on your talk with McCoven. So a little bit about Prue before I get ahead of myself. So Prue she's amazing. She's a restaurateur. She has a Michelin-starred restaurant. And then she's also super famous for being the hostess of British Bake Off. And she's done just a wide range of things. It's so crazy. She's sitting on so many boards of companies all over the world, traveling everywhere. So, I mean, I can go on for hours just listing all of Prue's accomplishments. Such an inspiring woman. And it's an honor for you to be here. Thank you,
Well,
Prue.
it's just lovely to be here, isn't it?
Right. So,
I mean, have you ever been to a conference, anything like this?
Oh, no, not at all.
All those entrepreneurs were just so fascinating to listen to, and business people and bankers and venture capitalists and mindfulness gurus and all sorts of people, all so absolutely dedicated to their businesses and yet knowing how to live and being happy.
And there's such a positive energy to that, right? Because
Fantastic.
everybody's in that mindset where it's not just about making money; it's about living a life of freedom, like personal freedom, and like living the life that they want to live, and getting other people to live that kind of lifestyle as well.
And,
right?
they're practicing what they preach because their own businesses are pretty sustainable and principled and not all about the money. And the conference stuff has been fantastic, but also the place. I mean, I'm just so jealous of Richard Branson having an island to make a garden in. 75 acres of unbelievably beautiful planting. And buildings and the sea everywhere, and I mean, obviously he didn't make the blue water and the.
But he did spot it.
Yeah.
I mean, what an eye he had, and what a deal he made.
He's a hell of an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're just talking about the gardening.
He's a very good example though, because not everything has worked. People always look at successful people and think everything they touch turns to gold. It's not true. I mean, I've had a tremendously successful career, but I've done lots of things that have failed. Lots of things, and still do. I mean, I just had a necklace company that I'm going to have to change it completely because the original one, it wasn't working. And I once had a vegetable delivery company. I used to drive in a refrigerated truck from London to Paris to the great French market, Rouges, where they had all sorts of wild mushrooms you could never buy in England and vegetables you could never buy. And I'd bring this truckloads of stuff back and sell them to my restaurateur friends. And I thought I was going to make a fortune as a vegetable person. I totally failed.
Oh no, what happened?
Oh, well, no, I hadn't reckoned on a very simple truth which never occurred to me, that almost all the chefs at the time were on the take.
What does that mean exactly?
On the take, that means they were being bribed by the vegetable and meat suppliers.
Oh, no.
And so, because they were being given lots of money.
Like from the suppliers?
In order to have the contract, the restaurants were paying, of course, far too much for everything because they had the guys, the vegetable. And I got all these contracts by ringing all my friends up who were restaurateurs and say, look, I'm going to be the first honest vegetable person you have ever met, and I will not give your chefs bribes, and I will not put the rotten oranges in the bottom of the box and the good ones on the top, and I won't peel the cabbages so they look fresh when actually they've been sitting around for 2 weeks. And so they all said, yes, okay, you can have the contract.
Right.
And then all the chefs said, where's my handout?
Of course.
And I said, no handouts, just very good veg. And they said, and then of course, the owners of the restaurants had to choose between losing their chef and losing the veg lady, so they lost the veg lady.
That's crazy. And so, and they were like, they knew that the chefs were in on this then.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that's insane. Wow.
I know. But it's changed now, I'm glad to say. The restaurant trade is a much more, it's much honester. Of course, there's still some crooks around.
Of course.
But it's a much cleaner business, and it's kinder too. It's not so horrible to young apprentices. And
right.
It used to be like going into the army, you know, getting bullied to hell.
From all of these failures you've had, what are the main lessons you've drawn that you could share for someone who's looking to develop the mindset that it takes to actually like own your life, own a business, own everything you do?
Well, I never ever worked for anybody else. In a way, I mean, I suppose I must have had jobs when I was very young, you know, short-term student jobs or something. But I started working for myself as soon as I left chef school, and I started with going around London as a cook for hire, you know, cooking people's dinner parties basically, and that grew into a big catering company. So I had to learn as I went along. I never worked in a company, so I didn't know what was good and what was bad. But it just seems to me the main thing about work, I think, is that you've got to enjoy it. And everybody has to enjoy it. Your staff have to have a good time. They shouldn't dread coming to work. And they should like each other, and they should like you, and you should like them. And so my sort of tips for young would-be business people is, first of all, never work with somebody you don't like. Never hire somebody you don't like. And also, I think it's really important that somebody coming to you for a job should be able to take references on you. I always said to people who came to us for a job, I'd give them the names of the people that they would be working with, in what department they'd be working. And I'd say, here are their phone numbers. And they'd all have agreed to this because it had happened to them when they came in. Ring them up, ask them what it's like. I mean, I can tell you, you know, that we're really generous and kind, and we pay nicely, and we send you home when your children want to, you know, you want to go to the kids' school concert, and we understand if your dad's sick, and we're a lovely company. But why would you believe me? What you have to do is ask the people you'll be working with. I mean, I wouldn't hire a laundry maid or a cleaner without taking a reference on them. So why on earth why can't they take a reference on you?
Absolutely. I think that's crucial. Like we actually do that in my company as well. So everybody that joins the team, like before they join,
they get to meet their first interview.
Yeah, because it makes sense. I mean, in both ways.
Sure.
Both the person that's joining the team, and then also if I'm talking to someone or one of my partners, anybody who's doing the interview, they talk to someone, they might miss something that the person who's going to be working with them on the day-to-day is
exactly.
going to...
And also, it's really expensive if you hire the wrong person, and then you have to get rid of them and start again.
Yeah.
It's better to get the right person.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I'd say make sure that the fit is right. Make sure that... And be... and it's such a cliche to say this, but I think you have to think what it would be like to be in their shoes always, so that you understand, you know, that they have to have... We all always sat down lunch together, all of us. And I found it really difficult when the company got too big for us to all... I remember there were various pinch points, like when there were a dozen of us, we would all sit in the staff room and have lunch together. And then when there were 24, it was more difficult, so we had to do 2 shifts. And then when there were 100, by then we were in two different buildings, and when we were 500. But we always stuck to the fact that that we provided lunch. I mean, we were a catering company, we were a food business. How can you expect them to bring in some miserable sandwich and a cup of coffee from across the road when we're a food business?
Right.
It seems wrong. So very often staff lunch would be leftovers, basically. I mean, we'd find ourselves with too much bread, and so one of the chefs would be given the task of turning it all into, sort of pizza on toast type.
What's your favorite food, by the way?
What's my favorite food? Well, I suppose I'm often asked this, and what always springs to my mind is bangers and mash. You know.
What's that?
Bangers and mash.
Oh, I've
sausages
never had it.
and mashed potatoes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Big sausages, like French sausages, very meaty, with mashed potato, lots of butter on it, and caramelized fried onions on top. About the unhealthiest lunch you could have. It's delicious.
Oh, wow, that sounds really good. All right. Yeah. All right. And now, Prue, you've had a very fascinating journey. And in the very beginning, like when you started, you were catering to ladies who were hosting lunches and all that. How did you have that first boom of growth, that initial spur that led you onto a path of success?
Well, I think I never had to advertise, because what would happen is, I started just cooking people's dinners, and then they would tell, I got a job cooking dinner for a woman once. It was quite a funny story, actually, but I was doing dinner for her, and she had a dinner party, and it was an old-fashioned kitchen with a sort of hatch between the kitchen and the dining room, so I could hear everything they were saying in the dining room. And I heard one of her guests saying, "This is absolutely delicious. You should give me that cook's number, because I'd like her to do my director's lunches in the city." And she said, "Oh, no." She said, "That girl in the kitchen, she doesn't do the cooking. She's not the cook. I do all the cooking."
No way.
So I do all the cooking. She said, "She's just there to do the washing up and the clearing up." And I was so cross. I wanted to open the hatch, put my head through, and
taking credit of your work,
and enlighten her. But I thought that wouldn't be too clever. So what I did was I had little cards printed, you see, and I had hung up all the guests' coats in the hall. So I put one of these little cards into every pocket I could find. All the guests' cock. And the next day, that guy rang up, or his secretary did, and said he'd like to see me. And I went to see him, and he said, "I want you to do my director's lunches." And he said, and I said, "How did you hear about me?" And he said, "Well, I was at that party last night, and you put a thing in my pocket, card in my pocket." And he said, "I really was impressed with your food. It was simply delicious." He said, "But I was far more impressed with your marketing skills."
Right. That's brilliant.
And I think I have always been quite good at marketing, because I'm a terrible chatterbox, and so anyhow, I never really had to advertise. People would tell each other. I mean, It's a really word-of-mouth business, the food business. And I always wanted a restaurant, but I didn't have enough money to open a restaurant. So I stuck at the catering, and the catering led to bigger and bigger parties, and finally to getting contracts to cook to do the catering for big companies. Like I did the food for Goldman Sachs at one point. I did all the food for the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre, and the Edinburgh Conference Centre, and the Belfast Conference Centre, because we became really good at conferences catering. And nothing like this, mind you, I tell you. This knocks spots.
There's a whole
anything.
Different level, yeah.
Lost spots or anything. But I think we were the first caterers to take conferences seriously, because the food at conferences, because the way the money works in a conference is that the conference organisers, say it's a medical conference and they're selling spaces to doctors, it'll be £300 to come for the day. But that will include the food and the pad and pencils or whatever they need, and the conference. And the truth is that the only way that they can, the conference organisers don't care about the food if they can make it cost £5.
Right.
Because the
food's secondary.
It's just a cost.
Right.
Like providing the loos. And they don't
that makes
like,
sense.
They
just want to keep the cost down. Yeah.
And then they wouldn't, so they'd allow really, very little for the food. And this bugged me. And at the time, the average amount of money would be about £5, which was supposed to give them a glass of wine and their lunch. And I said, well, I can, at the time, it was a long time ago, you couldn't do it today, but I would rather give them a really nice plate of spaghetti bolognese and a bit of salad than a whole lot of what most conference caterers did, was they did so-called finger buffets, little.
Right.
And they would save money on everything, so there'd be really horrible lots of pastry, more bread, no filling, everything.
There was lots of food, but low quality.
And not pleasant to do, and very labour intensive making all those things.
Oh yeah.
So we started doing sort of £5 conference lunches, and one of them was the spaghetti bolognese and salad. One of them was just a really good cheese board, and really nice breads and different chutneys and so forth, and an ice cream, afterwards. And so they were really simple, but delicious.
Right.
And so we got a good reputation with that. And then they started realizing that actually people would pay more if they had good food. So we'd persuade them to actually charge 20 quid for the lunch.
Was it hard to do that, like just to up the price?
No, it depended who the conference caterers were. I think about the medical ones particularly because they were always most tight-fisted. But music people paid better.
Of course, yeah. I can imagine music people just like...
Well, they like food.
Yeah.
I mean, they like... Yeah.
It's interesting that the medical ones would be the... what kind of conference did you cater to?
Medical... it would be a medical conference organised by some university or some, I don't know who
organized. Of course, yeah.
But I don't really know what they were, but I just noticed that they were... But at the time, it's only now that doctors are beginning to realise that food could be medicine.
It's crazy how little doctors know about nutrition. Yeah. I mean, they barely study it.
They barely study it. Now there's a actually I'm a patron of it, but there's a charity called Culinary Medicine, and it actually started in America, and they are in 4 medical schools now in the States, where nutrition and diet related to health and disease and all that. So it is actually taught in college, in the medical schools. We have the same thing in England. We've managed to get it into half a dozen medical schools, but they have it as an optional course. There's some courses that you have to do one of 3, and it can be, and one of them is culinary medicine, and then one of them will be fitness or something. So we haven't, but in America, they've actually got it into some of the medical curriculum, which is vital. I mean, how can they not have anything to do with
the American system? And it's not just the American system. I think a large part of the world, like the healthcare system, is pretty broken. I mean, they treat the illness and they don't prevent it.
No, it's all about that.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that's the problem.
Yeah.
But I was talking to somebody earlier about this, and the fundamental problem is that the junk food industry has a vested interest in selling junk because it's very cheap and it's addictive and you can't stop eating it. And
then the same companies that own the junk food, they sell you the pill that fixes the problem that the junk food creates.
And the doctors then have a very happy time sending you off from one doctor and one specialist to another, one after another, all of whom rob your bank and give you another MRI or another scan or another set of exercises or something or other. And nobody thinks holistically about a patient. Let's find out how you are when you're well and then monitor you all your life so that you can tell when things are beginning to go wrong. So we can prevent.
That would be something.
Wouldn't it?
I mean, I think we need a bit more of that. Well, not a bit, a lot more of that in the world. Just taking the proactive action to take care of your life, your wellness in general. And I think it actually even comes down to what we were talking about, people being able to take ownership of their lives. That's a huge part of it. Yeah. If you don't own your health, if you just do the things that you've been told, or just don't question the natural path of eating junk food, going to McDonald's, having...
and you think a pill will fix it.
Yeah. And then you end up having to take massive amounts of pills because you haven't taken care of your life.
Well, when my first husband was becoming really ill at the end of his life, I told him, we've got to change doctors, this is ridiculous. And I found a really good GP who was a consultant, general practitioner. And Rain was on 17 different pills at the time.
Oh, my God.
And he took him off the whole lot. And he just said, we're going to start again. and he took him off gradually because some of them,
of course, yeah,
too much
detox is way too heavy.
But he was so much better without all those medicine.
Of course, because all the side effects interacting with each other.
And I mean, we know from the opioid thing that medicine is not as uncorrupt as we think. We like to think it is.
It's huge. Like it's a hugely corrupted industry.
I don't think medicine's that corrupt in England, but it's subtly corrupt because they have no time. If you've only got 10 minutes to see a patient, it's much easier to send them away with a pill.
And I think that's it. I mean, I don't think doctors are evil or anything like that. I don't think even pharma top executives, I don't think they're evil. They might genuinely think that they are doing something good for the world. It's easy to convince yourself that what you're doing is actually good for the world. Then that's much easier than actually questioning, okay, could there be something better that's going to go against my interest because I'm going to sell less pills, but people are going to be healthier.
Exactly.
So,
anyway, we're not going to.
We're not.
I mean, the English National Health Service is absolutely broken at the moment. I mean, in my little village, about a third of the doctors have already left to start their own private practice because they just don't like doing nothing but fill in forms and seeing
the bureaucracy.
20 people a day and not being able to follow them up and not being able to talk to them properly and not being able to go and ever visit them and spending most of their time on the phone and a computer. So, so a lot of people are now paying for both. Through their taxes, they're paying for the National Health Service. They're also paying for private medicine.
Absolutely.
And it's not much better.
No, I can imagine. Now, one thing we've been talking throughout the conference as well about is how, there's all of these flaws in how government operates. But that also creates an opportunity in the private sector to do things, to solve problems that clearly government is not solving or it might not be the channel to solve it. And I'm curious, have you gotten involved in anything, or have you been on the boards of any companies that are doing something along those lines?
The closest I've had to doing anything in the medical front or that sort of front is I was once on an American company called Nations Healthcare, and we built hospitals in England to take advantage of the fact that English medical service, which is all owned by the government, the National Health Service, was overloaded and they couldn't keep up with the demand. And interestingly, I remember one statistic, because we took off the hospital, the local hospital, the easy things like cataract operations and broken bones and nothing. They did all the heavy work because the NHS is very good on all that, brain surgery and stuff. But in a day, and the consultants who were working for us were also still working for the NHS. They would just reserve a couple of days for us where they made real money, and the rest of the time they'd work in the NHS for their ordinary salary. And in a day, a cataract operator, surgeon, could do. It used to be about 7 or 8 cataract operations if they were working for the NHS hospital, which is over there. And they would do 17 or 18 cataract operations when they worked for us. And I said, how can that be? And they said, well, you guys are organized. When we arrive, the patient is in the right place, the forms are properly filled in, the computer, the right stuff has come up on the computer.
It's all the bureaucracy that's stopping them, basically.
Yes,
that's insane.
The surgery is ready with the right instruments and the right nurses in it and all the rest of it, and it works lickety-split, and it's a pleasure. When we arrive at the hospital over there, which admittedly is an old Victorian hospital, long corridors, not superb. We had a spanking new one, but they would find the patient's records were still on paper, so they were fumbling around the thing. They'd have the wrong thing. We used to ring up our patients every night, the night before they were due to remind them that they were coming in for a cataract operation. And that made
because people would not go?
Yeah, a lot of them just don't turn up.
Wow.
don't. And
you'd think they'd remember that.
yes, you'd think.
No, yeah. That's amazing.
It's a huge problem in the NHS. People don't turn up to doctor's appointments because they feel a bit better and they can't be bothered, and they think, well, they own it anyway because it's a state thing, and what does it matter? It's not. But actually, it's robbing the taxpayer because they lose money. They lose a huge amount of money by people not turning up. I'm all for them charging just a little bit, even 50 pence or a pound, $1. If they charged $1 for an appointment, people would come. They don't want to throw away $1.
Of course.
Even just $1.
Yeah. You got to get something in there. Because free stuff is just so easy to get. Why say no?
Yeah.
But even if it's just $1, they need to make that commitment, and it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Anyway, but that we were entirely dependent on the National Health giving us the contracts to do these things, and it didn't work in the end because there was a huge backlash of, what are you letting American companies into Britain for? And this shouldn't. And this is the private sector is, ruining. There was so much unrest and ill-informed protest. When actually we were doing a good job.
That's crazy.
So,
and you're probably saving taxpayers money too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's insane. What happened to that venture?
I don't know what happened in the end. It was sold, and I left at the point that it was sold.
Okay.
Because I had joined it because I really liked the guys who set it up.
Right.
They were American doctors from, what's that very famous hospital in?
Mayo?
No, not the other one. Anyway, American hospital. And I liked them, and so that's why I joined it. And then they were unhappy with the sale, and so they weren't going to stay. And so.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. That's such a bummer that didn't work out. I mean, it sounds like you were doing such a great job.
We were doing a good job.
Yeah, and what about other successes that you've had?
Successes.
Well, what's one that you found particularly entertaining?
Well, I think the things that I'm most proud of are not necessarily what you'd expect. I mean, for example, which is something I didn't talk about last night, but one of the things that I am genuinely proud of is that I started a campaign to get contemporary sculptures on an empty plinth in Trafalgar Square. Well, Trafalgar Square, as you know, is right in the centre of London. It's a sort of iconic square, and it has a huge statue of Nelson in the middle of it on a long column. And there has always been one of the four plinths. They've all got equestrian statues on them. It has been empty all these years, and it just bugged me. I kept thinking, there must have been a statue on there once. So I wrote a letter to the Evening Standard, the newspaper, saying, why did they put back whatever statue belongs there? There must have been one. And presumably it's fixed by now. Why didn't they put it back? And then lots of people wrote into the paper and said, silly woman, doesn't she realise there's never been a statue on that plinth? Because it was designed for William IV, the king, but he was so unpopular, and he was paying for it himself. And,
oh, wow.
And when and it was about 1840, I suppose, or 1830, he was so unpopular, they called him Silly Billy. He was a really stupid king.
Oh, wow.
Anyhow, he was very unpopular. And so when he died, nobody would put the statue up. They refused. So nothing had ever been put up there. So that just goes like a red rag to me. I thought, right, the fact that and people have tried over the years, but, one man's hero is always somebody else's villain, and then because of the iconic square, there would be objections. So I thought, we've got to do it. And I got a little committee together, because I'm not in the middle of the art world. I just love it, and I'm just very interested in especially contemporary modern art. So I got a little committee together, and we one of them said, let's the way to crack this fact that if one person suggests something, somebody will object, is if we do something that comes down all the time. Just use it as exhibition space, so you have revolving different statues on there all the time, and new ones all the time. Then nobody will object because they know it's coming down in a year, so it's not going to make a huge effort if they don't like it.
That's very interesting.
Very clever,
I love the concept. Yeah.
And so that's what we have, and that was about 20 years ago.
Oh wow!
And it's still going strong.
Oh,
and there's a new one every 8 or 9 months, and some of them I've loved, some of them I don't love, but it would never have happened without me.
Right.
And it's become so beloved. I mean, schools use it as a sort of art project for the kids. The tourism marketing people use it to sort of show that Britain isn't all, beefeater soldiers and castles and royal family, that we are good at arts. And
right.
So it becomes a symbol of modern art.
And I love it because, I mean, you get to have a different experience every time you go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and they are and all of the great sculptures of the day have been up there now.
Wow.
And some of them I've loved, some of them have been pretty awful.
That's beautiful. I love it.
So I'm very proud of that. I don't really believe in legacy because I think once you're gone, and people will forget. But I do like the idea that there's something I've been involved in that is a little less ephemeral than a meal.
Right.
Making great food is very satisfying for a second, but then it's gone. It's gone. Absolutely gone.
It impacts people's lives as well.
It's very important, but it's just nice to have something that I hope will remain.
I hear you. Yeah. And well, one thing I love about talking with you is, I mean, I can see that you've done so many things, and whenever you talk about them, you have this passion, like you have this energy about it, the way you talk about it. It's like you fell in love with the project, and then you had the energy and the drive to see it through, and to just stick it out, and whether it succeeds or fails.
I do think that you very seldom succeed with anything if you're not a bit dogged.
Yeah.
And I am unbelievably dogged. And my first husband used to say to me, "Look, I give in now because I know I'm going to have to give in." And I like that attitude. But I tend to think if I don't get something through, I think it's worth having another go. If I really realize something's failing, I don't dwell on it. I just think, oh, well, that was it was a bad idea, try something else. Or I think, actually, it was a really good idea, I just didn't do it right, let's try again.
Ah, that's a beautiful way to interpret it, yeah.
But I never fret about things that haven't worked.
That's wonderful.
In the past.
Yeah, I mean, the past is the past. You got to move on, learn the lessons, move on, do something else, and I mean, it's paid off for you, wonderfully.
Yeah, but I have liked the fact that I've had a life where, I've always written a lot. When I was in Paris as a student, I was writing a column for the Johannesburg Tatler about being a student in Paris. It was
interesting.
And I've always written stuff, and so I became a journalist. And I first wrote cookery and cookery columns, and then I started writing general journalism. And now I write a column for a magazine called The Oldie, which is for oldies.
Interesting.
Over 50s. So I write a column for them, and I've written a lot for The Spectator, and sometimes it's about politics or about. I write about whatever I like,
right?
And it's pretty broad.
But I think there's also something to it that I don't know. It kind of cleanses your mind. It helps you.
Yeah, it does.
It helps you process your ideas and see things more clearly. I know for me, it's been super useful, like journaling. I mean, just being able to write whatever is on my mind and. I might be anxious about something, and then I write it down, and you have
clear,
so much clarity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And writing things down is really, even for last night, although I know my life so well, I don't really need any notes. But I did sit down and say to to Alexander, here are a few things that might be interesting to talk about. Yeah. I do, and I do write a lot. I think writing's like a disease. People often say to me, oh, I'm going to write a novel when I retire. And I say, oh, well, what are you writing now? And they say, oh, I'm not writing now, I'm too busy. That's not a writer. Yeah. They will never write that novel.
Right.
They may not be able to write a novel because, I couldn't write novels until I actually sold my business. I could write journalism and I could write articles and I could write cookbooks. I wrote 12 cookbooks. But I only wrote my novels, and I wrote 8 of them, and an autobiography, only when I could spend... when you're writing a cookbook or an article, you can spend half an hour on a train on it, and you put it away and pick it up again. But if you're writing a novel, you have to somehow sink yourself into this world that you've created, and you have to live in it a bit. And you need long stretches, a whole 3 hours or something.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
And so I sold my business in the end because the desire to write novels, fiction, finally got too much for me. And so I had 25 years of
That's what led you to sell everything.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, I had 25 years of companies, and I was writing cookery books then, and a column for Daily Mail or somebody or other. Food, recipes and things like that. And then after 25 years, I thought, the companies were all doing really well. My husband was about to turn 70, and I was about to turn 50. So I thought, it's the right time, I'll be able to sell it really well. And so we did. And then I stayed at home and wrote novels for a while. And then I started doing telly.
That's how you ended up in the TV.
Television.
Yeah. All right.
And the last few television programs I'm still, like, every year I go on doing Bake Off.
And it's not just bakery stuff. Like you were just talking about the gardening here and how you did a gardening show.
Yeah, the baking stuff. I do the Great British Bake Off and the Great American Baking Show, which is the same sort of show.
Oh, right.
But it's on Roku.
Okay.
And that is exactly the same, except it has American contestants.
Interesting.
So that's quite fun. And then sometimes I do Junior Bake Off, which is with children. But I haven't done that for a while.
Junior Bake Off.
Because it usually happens at the same time as American Bake Off, and I have to choose between the two.
And these are kids that have, they have experience cooking, or did they
they're just there. No, they have to apply, and they're absolutely amazing. They're nuts. They're completely nuts about cooking, and they're better bakers than I am, to be honest.
That's wonderful.
But it's quite fun, the children's one. But anyway, that goes on all the time. But then I made a film with my daughter, who's Cambodian, because she's adopted. I adopted her when she was a baby. And she was a war orphan from Cambodia, the killing fields period. And so we went off to Cambodia to see if we could find her birth parents, because she had become very interested in, now that there's DNA testing, people from that war, which was after all 45 years ago now, are still looking for their family. And gradually the older people are dying, of course. And so people it's kind of a desperate scramble to try and see if they can contact, because a quarter of the population of Cambodia was killed in that war. Pol Pot was a complete maniac. And so we went and made a film about adoption and looking for parents with my daughter, and I absolutely loved doing that. She's a very good filmmaker, and it was fun to do. And then last year I did a program with my son, who's an MP, and it was about assisted dying, because I'm campaigner for, I suppose the closer I get to the end of my life, and I must be pretty close to it now, I'm really keen.
No, you're not. You have so much energy. I hope I have that much energy when I'm your age.
Well, I do have a lot of energy, but having had a very energetic and happy life, I don't want to have to spend the last few months or weeks or even days in absolute agony. So I'd like to be able to, I'd like to have something, what they have in Oregon. You can get some assistance in, in leaving this life when you've had enough of it.
So right now, there's a debate going on about assisted...
In England, and in Scotland...
Assisted suicide, is that what it's called?
Yes, assisted suicide.
Assisted suicide.
Well, they call it assisted dying because they don't like the word suicide, but assisted dying. And so I campaigned for it, and in the last few months I've talked to the House of Lords, the House of Commons in England, the Scottish Parliament, and so on, because, they all want to know both sides of the question. And meanwhile, my son leads the campaign against
that's just
the opposition. So we went off together to make a film about showing both sides of the question. And so we went to Oregon, and we went to Washington State, and we went to Atlanta, and we went to Canada, to Vancouver Island, and to Toronto. So we saw people on both sides of the argument, and we never had a crossword, and it was very interesting listening to one of the speakers here at this conference talking about how absolutely profitless and useless this divided country. We have the same thing in England. People are either drifting further and further to the right or further and further to the extreme left, and all the middle people, who is most of the country, are not represented in any way. And you have the same thing with the pro-Trump and anti-Trump.
And it's crazy because you can have, you're showing this with your son. You can have a civil conversation while having different ideas.
Exactly, and you can, if you get to that, you can begin to get a compromise, or, I would like, what I'm hoping will happen is that we're about to have an election. We will within the next year, and so we're trying to get all the political parties to sign up to agreeing that they will bring debate the issue in Parliament, and give it time. In the British system, you can if a private member brings a bill and it's debated, the opposition can just talk it out because it gets, say, a day and a half allocated or something, and if they haven't decided what to do, it's just dropped, and it's a waste of money, a waste of time, waste of anything. Whereas in Scotland, they don't have that. So in Scotland, it'll definitely go through this year, and I'm hoping. Well, it definitely won't be before the election, but after the election. I wanted to be in time for me.
I think you have time. You have time. You're good.
And then, so I've made a film with my daughter, a film with my son, and now I made a series with my husband about gardening. Because we were making a new garden in our house. We've just built a new house.
That is so cool.
So, but he turns out to be, and now we've just done another series which will be shown in February, which is called Prue's Cotswold Kitchen, which is mostly about food and cooking. And I get it, like your podcast, I get interesting people to come and talk to me, and I interview them, and I feed them their favourite food, or they cook it for me, or whatever.
That's wonderful.
So there's a bit of food, and John goes off looking at local suppliers and organic farmers and smokers and people who involved with sheep sharing or either farming or food.
Sheep sharing, interesting.
Yes, and he's quite good at machines one way or another. and so
I have to say, it's crazy how much you still do. Like it would be crazy for like a 21-year-old to do this much.
Oh, well, I have a lot of help. One of the things, because I've been very successful in my main business, which was the catering company and the restaurant and the chef school. Oh, and I have a chef school in South Africa too. Did I tell you that?
Oh no, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm South African, so I've always gone back there, and I'm quite keen to help them because South Africa's in such a mess.
Right.
But why am I telling you this? But my central business that I finally sold made me enough money to play around at silly businesses like, having spectacles or glasses or clothes and other things.
I think that's
which I don't make much money out of, but I do.
But you still do.
But I still do them.
Yeah.
I can't resist it. I do new things all the time.
I think that's just beautiful. I mean, it goes to that. Like you have that passion to give to so many different things, and you put in the passion, you put in the interest, you put in the work.
But I
so
don't.
much energy.
But honestly, I have such a lovely life. I mean, I don't have to do anything. But so I do it because I love it. And sometimes people say to me, "But why don't you retire? Why don't you just stop?" And I would if I wanted to. I could afford to, but I find it difficult to say no. And I'm always interested in stuff.
Of course.
I'm very interested in a new fish farm in Iceland. They should have been at this conference. Amazing fish farm. I think perhaps talking about fish could go on forever. Because I love fishing.
Oh, I would love to talk about that. Now, I do think we should start wrapping up. Just one last question.
Whatever you say.
Oh, no. I mean, I want to keep talking to you for hours.
Well, let me just tell you about the fish.
Fascinating.
Let me tell you about the fish farm because
okay.
it would have been a very good presentation here. The trouble
now, this is a fish farm that you have?
No, it's a fish farm I just admire.
Okay.
I've always fished. Fly fishing, which I really love. In fact, after we're finished here, I'm going to the Bahamas to do bone fishing.
Oh, what's bone fishing?
Well, it's fly fishing. You have a fly on the end of the line instead of a lump of meat.
Okay.
And you fish for bonefish, who swim in shoals.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you stand in the water, and the lovely thing is, unlike Scotland, where you have far too many...
I was imagining something crazy. I was imagining like the rod was a bone.
Oh, no. No,
that makes a lot more sense.
Anyway, I love bone fishing because you're standing in your swimmers in the water with sneakers on, getting a suntan, and the sky is blue and it's brilliant, and you're either in the water yourself or you're in a skiff with a guide.
Well, what's
a skiff?
A
little boat, skiff, little boat with a sail.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah. And so it's absolute heaven. Whereas in Scotland, which I do love, and I do fish in Scotland, first of all, there's hardly any fish in the river anymore because they've all been fished out.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And it's freezing cold, and the rain is pouring down, and you've got to have all these clothes on. Jackets and it's just not. It's just bone fishing is completely different. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm very interested in salmon fishing because I've done it all my life, and there are less and less salmon in the rivers, both in Iceland and in
Alaska,
in Alaska, and all over the North Sea and the Atlantic. So the laws of most of countries have now limited fishing. And so the stocks are really, because the stocks are so low, but they want to get them back, so there's no fishing. So they've been farming salmon because salmon is a very popular fish. It's very cheap to raise, in fact, and it's hugely profitable. And so actually the fish farmers who now have these huge cages in lochs, either out to the sea or inland lakes, they overstock them so that the water is really disgustingly polluted because these fish are pooing in it all the time. And the seabed underneath the fish farms are absolutely sterile. They're dead. The seabed is dead because it's been smothered by all this crap, both dead fish and poo. And 40% of some fish farms' stock dies in the poo.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible.
And then the rest of them are covered in sea lice, and they put the salmon through a kind of inflatable roller thing. They force the salmon to swim through this, which knocks off all the sea lice. So they look as if they're fresh, silvery, healthy fish, but they're actually it's horrific. Anyway, there's a new fish farm in Iceland which is on land, so it can't pollute the sea. They take all the waste from the water, they change the water every day, And the water comes from the sea under these volcanic aquifers, which filter it. So the water is absolutely sparklingly clean all the time. They filter it, and then they put all the muck that they collect, and they turn it into fertilizer for trees, tree planting scheme. And the fish is absolutely beautiful. The water goes around in a very fast vortex, which means that the fish are swimming as if they were in the wild sea. So they get the fish is nice and firm, and they don't overstock them. And it's called silver scale, and it's the first. It's going to be a new one.
I have to look it up.
And because it's volcanic heat, they don't have to pay for electricity or anything.
That sounds
fascinating. So it's not expensive, and it's unbelievably good.
Thank you so much, Prue. I'm definitely going to look them up. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
I'm such an egotist. I love talking about myself anyway.
Oh, well, I mean, this was totally not about yourself. You were talking about a company you have no involvement in.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I really appreciate it.
No, it was good fun. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.